Hi, I'm Samantha Reigle, an intuitive and longtime mediator with over 2 decades of experience helping people navigate conflict and inner chaos. Whether it's showing up in your relationships or in the world around you, I'm going to show you how any kind of duress you're feeling isn't random, it's revealing. It's pointing to the beliefs and patterns that are no longer working for you. This podcast helps you stop reacting on autopilot and start responding with intention. And that's what I want to get into today, autopilot. So let's talk about these loops that you're in. You know, the kind where you wake up and the day just runs itself. You go through the motions, not because you want to, but because that's what your body and brain know. You're on autopilot. Maybe it starts the moment your eyes open. You reach for your phone, scroll, maybe check email, maybe don't, but you're already in it. The mental noise, the urgency, the pressure. You move through breakfast, getting the kids ready and stepping into the day on autopilot. And by mid-morning, tension has settled into your shoulders and even small inconveniences can set off a reactive streak. And by the end of the day, you feel drained, mentally worn down, and emotionally thin. Tomorrow comes and we just get right back on that loop and do it all again. So I caught myself in one of these loops recently. My kid spilled their juice and without even thinking, I snapped, saying the exact same sentence I said countless moments like this before. Same tone, same edge of frustration. And then when it hit my ears, I thought, wait, that sounds exactly like something my mom used to say that I swore I would never do. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just my reaction. I didn't create it out of thin air. I inherited it. I grew up hearing it, seeing it, feeling it. And without even realizing, I carried it forward into my own parenting. And I'm sure there's plenty of other parents out there that have caught themselves saying the exact same thing that their parents always said to them. And it's the easiest way that I can point this out as an example. But here's the thing. Most of us aren't just stuck in habits with our mornings or our work days. We're stuck in these conflict loops we didn't even know we were repeating. And let me break down what a conflict loop is. It's essentially a pattern where you have a trigger and then you have a reaction and a reinforcement. So something happens like spilled juice cup, a snide comment, and before you know it, you're reacting out of a learned, automatic, and almost unavoidable response. These reactions will feel like a reflex because they are. Your nervous system learned them a long time ago as a way to survive or adapt whatever situation you're in. So think about this. You're trying to get everyone out of the house in the morning. Your body tenses, your voice rises, you're late, you know that you're late, and suddenly you're saying, come on, I don't have all day. Exactly like your parent may have said to you. Or your partner forgets to empty the dishwasher when the sink is full of dirty dishes and you snap, I can't believe you did this again. The same words you grew up hearing. The trigger is small, but your reaction is automatic. And then the loop reinforces itself because your nervous system is wired to respond this way every single time you're triggered. But here's the key. Every conflict loop is also a portal. I believe it to be a portal. And the same triggers that pull us into automatic reactions are the exact doorway to awareness. When a conflict hits, it's giving us data. Here's the pattern. Here's what's alive inside of you that needs recognition. And if we stop and notice these little triggers and the reactions they produce, we can start to step out of the autopilot loop. We can see the inherited behavior, the tension in our bodies, the frustration in our minds, and then choose differently next time. So the same way we notice our morning routines, we can notice conflict loops and start practicing breaking them. And I have 3 shifts that can help you do that. All right, I'm going to dig into those. The first is what I call a micro choice moment in conflict. So instead of waiting for a huge breakthrough, start small. Tiny intentional choices interrupt autopilot and give your brain a taste of possibility. Here's an example. When your coworker talks over you in a meeting, notice how you usually react. Then make one small conscious choice. Maybe you soften your tone. Let them know that you haven't finished speaking in a nice, soft tone. Or you decide to respond with curiosity instead of frustration. So these little small micro choices compound over time. The minute you start making these choices, you're teaching your nervous system that conflict doesn't have to repeat the same inherited script. My second tip would be to ask yourself, how do I want to feel? Most of us start conflict thinking only about winning, fixing, or reacting, but what if we asked, how do I want to feel through this disagreement? And this will shift your focus from defense to intention. For instance, if your goal is to stay calm, you now have a touchstone when stress hits. The next time a car cuts you off in traffic or someone spills something on your new shirt, pause and ask, what would calm, grounded me choose right now? Leading with your desired feeling allows you to respond from awareness and not autopilot. So turning conflict into a chance for growth. So leading with your desired feeling allows you to respond from awareness and not autopilot, turning conflict into a chance for growth and evolution. And then my third tip would be to name what you're feeling when tension rises. Just pause and identify the emotion, not the story, just the feeling. I'm frustrated. I'm hurt. I'm feeling rushed. If your partner forgets to do something you asked them to do multiple times, instead of spiraling or snapping, say to yourself, I'm irritated. I need a moment. So naming that emotion calms your nervous system. And it creates that space between feeling and reaction, and it will open a doorway to respond differently. Every time you do this in conflict, you're practicing stepping out of the loop instead of getting pulled deeper into it. So breaking starts with noticing what's automatic, understanding the triggers, and making tiny intentional choices, micro choices. Leading with your desired feelings and naming emotions as they arrive. Conflict, discomfort, and tension aren't enemies, they're portals. And it's my hope that you're going to start to see it that way, because each argument, spilled juice, or unmade bed is a doorway showing exactly where our inherited loops live and offering, ourselves a chance to rewrite them. So your triggers are your teacher. The automatic reactions they produce are not you. They're learned patterns, just waiting for your awareness. And with awareness, each conflict moment becomes a practice space. Every small shift rewrites the script you inherited, showing your kids and yourself that a different way is possible. The loops you've created for years aren't going to define you, because you're someone who can respond and not just react. And each response is a chance to teach yourself and the next generation that conflict can be a portal and not a prison. All right, I'm going to get into answering some questions now. I'm going to focus on how I can use both my experience in resolving conflict and my intuition to help you spot the deeper belief that might be creating the situation that you're in. Because often conflict isn't just about what's happening on the surface. It's about an unconscious belief running the show behind the scenes. And once we're able to shine a light on that, real change becomes possible. So if you'd like to send me your own question or situation or story, feel free to use the voicemail link in my show notes. You can leave a 3-minute voicemail with an overview of your situation, and I'll feature it on an upcoming podcast. And you're more than welcome to remain anonymous. Here we go. My first question. My husband and I have been together since high school. We've basically been best friends since we were kids. We've been married for 3 years now, and he's still my favorite person. But I've never had an easy relationship with his mom. Our conversations are usually pretty surface level, lots of gossip and complaints, nothing meaningful, and I've always felt a little disconnected from her. Almost a year ago, my mom passed away. Just writing that feels so unreal. She was truly my soulmate, and losing her has become the hardest thing I've ever gone through. I'm incredibly thankful for the 23 years I had with her, and during that time, my husband's family stepped up in big ways, helping with funeral costs and just being there when I was deep in grief. I'm genuinely grateful for that support. Now we're expecting our first baby. I'm excited, but I'm also heartbroken. My mom and I used to talk all the time about what it would be when I had kids. We had even picked out what they'd call her. It's been really hard knowing she won't be there to help me through this. Anyway, here's what happened. We were celebrating the pregnancy at dinner with my in-laws, and my mother-in-law made a toast. She laughed and said, "I'm so grateful to celebrate this new addition to our family. We can't wait to meet her." Then when she went into the whole speech about her own pregnancy and how my husband was born with a huge head, and out of nowhere, she said, "I look forward to being the favorite grandma, since, of course, I'll be the only grandma." The whole room went silent. I burst into tears and told her how incredibly insensitive that was, and I stormed off. Do you think that I behaved out of line? Okay, so I want to start off by saying that when you're in grief, I would ask that everything I talk about on this podcast about, paying attention to your responses and using conflict as a portal can be completely thrown out the window, because grief and the emotions that come along with it is a whole nother beast. And I wouldn't necessarily say that you're in your most grounded and rational state of mind when you're dealing with deep grief. But I want to answer this question. So I do want to say to her is that you're navigating a very difficult family moment. And you're moving through, like I said, life's most tender crossroads. And grief and new life, with you having a baby, are happening in the exact same season. And that's a lot for anyone. There's no black and white here. What happened at the dinner table was painful, not only because what was said, but because it touched on something sacred for you. And that's a belief being poked at in all of this. I think underneath this all, and maybe what you're feeling, is that maybe your mom is being forgotten. And that's because she's no longer here physically. And people might start acting like she never mattered, or that her role in your life or your baby's life can be replaced or erased. And that belief just isn't rational. It's rooted in the depth of your love for her and the ache of her absence. And it echoes one of grief's most painful questions. If others stop acknowledging her, does that mean she's really gone? So your mother-in-law's comment, joking or not, landed right in the center of that fear. And it made something invisible feel more invisible. And it's okay that it broke you in that moment. It makes sense. But it's important to say this too. Not everything that rises during grief is a belief to be reframed. Just like I said at the beginning of answering this question, sometimes it's just grief, a wave of it, raw, honest, undeniable. Grief isn't always a distortion or a mindset we need to fix. Sometimes it's the truest thing in the room. You miss your mom. She was your person, and you're entering motherhood without her here. And that heartbreak is real, and it's enough on its own to bring anyone to tears. It doesn't have to mean anything more than that to deserve space. Still, if you want something to hold on to, something grounding, you might lean into this truth instead. And I think that you probably already feel this way, but that truth could be, my mom and always will be my child's grandmother. Her love didn't leave when she did. I carry it and I'm going to pass it on. So that truth doesn't depend on your mother-in-law understanding it. It doesn't need the room's approval. It lives in you, and it will live in your child through your stories, your photos, and the way that you might comfort them, and the things that you teach and you love and you model. Your mom isn't gone. She's just not here in the way you wanted her or needed her to be, and that hurts, and that love can still continue. So as for how you responded, it was real. It wasn't graceful maybe, but it was honest, and you were hurting, and someone said something that made your grief feel a little dismissed. So you reacted. That doesn't make you too sensitive. It makes you a human being in pain, and you don't need to apologize for that. Later, if you want, you can revisit the situation. You can have maybe a boundary setting conversation about honoring your mother's memory as you step into this next chapter with your mother-in-law, if that's something you feel you need to do. But that doesn't have to happen right now. What you need in this moment maybe is some space. You're a woman becoming a mother yourself, and you're grieving and you're growing, and both deserve to be honored. All right, I hope this helps. On to the next question. I have a friend I've known for 10 years. We used to drink together a lot and we had a lot of fun. And now we're both 30. We naturally drink a lot less. So when she came to visit me, it really was hard. One night we went out and had a couple beers, and she ended up yelling at a woman in a bar because she thought the woman was homeless. And she tried to convince me that the woman was begging for money, even though I was sober and knew that wasn't true. The next day, she complained about being hungover and slept on my couch all day. I was bored. On her last day, she didn't want to do anything because she prefers relaxing on the couch when she's on vacation. She also complained about being broke, but she pays for a massage subscription, gets her nails done twice a month, and eats out every night. She complained about her parents and how they ruined her, but she also takes a lot of money from them. How do I deal with this? I feel drained and I don't even know if I should even continue this friendship. Thanks for sharing that. First, I hear how drained you feel, and that's really important to acknowledge. But here's the thing. What's showing up with this friendship isn't about pointing fingers or saying that she's a bad friend. It's really, I believe, acting like a mirror, both for her and for you. And it might be highlighting patterns and ways of being that no longer serve her. And it's also highlighting what doesn't serve you. So I want to be clear. I'm not going to tell you what to do about this friendship. That's really not my role. But I do want to point out that this shift in how you feel, which is drained, frustrated, bored, is worth noticing. It's a signal. We've all probably had a relationship at one point that we feel like we've outgrown, and sometimes we try to squeeze ourselves back into that old container, into these old patterns because it feels familiar. But here's the thing, it feels uncomfortable for a reason. So that discomfort is actually giving you a choice. You can either try to redefine the relationship so it fits your life now, or you can make room for new ones that align with who you are today. And only you will know what option you want to choose. And when we hold on to a friendship that might feel exhausting, it could be rooted in a belief like friendships have to last forever, or I have to keep this person in my life because of our history. But you can start to shift that belief to something like, I deserve friendships that support my growth and joy, even if that means letting go of old connections. And here are a few tips for letting go in a way that creates space for like a new reality. Just acknowledge where your friendship is without the judgment. Notice how she showed up and how it made you feel without trying to fix her behavior. Reflect on what the friendship truly gives you. Does it bring support, energy, joy, or mostly stress and obligation? And this could have been like a one-off weekend. Like you could be having like a great friendship over the phone, and maybe in person you're just not as great anymore. And that's something that only you have to figure out. Another thing you can do is redefine the boundaries. That could mean limiting your visits or conversations or topics. Protect your energy without needing to end the friendship immediately. And then shift that belief. Remember, friendships can evolve. Let go of the idea that keeping someone forever is a measure of loyalty, and create space for new relationships. Because when you let go of old energy, you're going to make room for connections that actually align with who you are now. So pay attention to that feeling of discomfort. It's actually a guide. It's not about telling her what to do or make a decision overnight. It's about noticing your own growth, honoring it, and giving yourself space to step fully into friendships in a life that truly support you. Okay, next question. I hope that helps. Today, our district sent out an email explaining how recently passed state laws will impact our schools. One of the changes includes a requirement to display a specific religious text in every classroom. The email clarified that this particular text is the only religious material that will be allowed in classrooms unless it directly supports the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills Standard. As a secondary math teacher, I feel strongly that religious texts, any of them, do not belong in my classroom. It doesn't align with my values or how I believe we should be creating space for students. I want to respect the law and protect my job, but I also don't want to betray my principles. What are my options here? How do I navigate this in a way that feels true to myself without putting my position at risk? So I think what this person's talking about, and I did hear about this on the news, is that now in Texas, teachers are required to hang the 10 commandments in their classrooms. So absolutely, this is such a valid and deeply personal question. And I think he's not alone in feeling this way. Probably a lot more teachers in Texas are kind of questioning this policy and figuring out how to navigate the law and maybe this policy that could conflict with their values, and especially in a space that's so deeply personal and influential as their own classroom. It's incredibly difficult. So I want to take a step back, take a deep breath, and look at this from a place of possibility. When values like separation of church and state are called into question, it's natural to feel unsettled. Your classroom is your professional and ethical space. You've worked hard to create an environment based on maybe equity, respect, and critical thinking. This is just a guess, but I'm sure there's a lot of teachers, however you want to frame it. And to have something imposed on that space that doesn't align with your personal or professional beliefs feels like an intrusion. And that deserves some space. But here's a few reframes that might help soften some of the distress. The law may shape your environment, but you still get to shape the experience for these kids. So the presence of the 10 commandments on your wall doesn't erase the tone or energy or intention you set in your classroom. Your classroom culture, the way you treat your students, the space you make for diverse perspectives, and the respect you model, that's where your values live. A posted text doesn't speak louder than how you show up, and students will pick up on that. They'll remember how you made them feel far more than what was posted on your wall. So the second reframe that you might want to consider is the difference between complying and endorsing. This isn't about selling out or giving in. It's about recognizing where your power lies and where it doesn't. So complying with a mandate like this may feel wrong, but it doesn't mean that you're necessarily endorsing the message. In fact, like I said before, continuing to teach with integrity, neutrality, respect for all beliefs, in spite of this law, is an act of quiet resistance. It's one that protects your livelihood while staying aligned with your ethics. But at the end of the day, you're not powerless. You're just being strategic. If this law grates against your core values, you can still use appropriate channels to advocate, vote, engage in discussions outside of that classroom. Consider connecting with other educators who feel similarly. And this is where collective voices become a form of advocacy. But in the day-to-day, you're allowed to make peace with not fighting every battle at full volume, especially when you're doing so could cost you your position or financial well-being. Also, I would consider zooming out and asking yourself, what's the long game? Ask yourself what you're building through your work. Maybe your greater mission is to be a safe adult for students who don't feel represented by this messaging. Maybe it's to create a model of critical thinking in a world of dogma. Whatever it is, keep your eye on that. And when you're grounded in the larger purpose, it's easier to tolerate moments that don't reflect your values without losing yourself. One of the most powerful things you can do in times like this is stand in your integrity without betraying yourself, but also bringing yourself out, but also without burning yourself out trying to fight everything alone. I think I might do an episode on this topic because of the nature of the country's politics right now. I'm sure there'll be more and more of us put into situations that don't necessarily align with our values. I'm going to wrap up. That's all I have for today. Thanks for listening. If today stirred something in you, an old belief, a new truth, or just a spark of possibility, great. That's the whole point. Awareness isn't always comfortable, but it's always powerful. And if you want to send your own real life conflict question or story for a future episode, feel free to leave me a voicemail and let me know your name or make one up. I don't mind. The more personal, the better. And if you're loving this show and want to help me wake more people up, you know what to do. Share it with a friend, leave a review, shout it out on socials. Until next time, don't react, but respond with intention.